Welcome everyone to today's webinar. We do generally a couple of webinars a month. Some of them are overviews, particularly useful for those that are either very new to ClubExpress or are considering ClubExpress as an association management solution. We do mostly deep dives into particular pieces of functionality. Like today we're doing additional member data and member attachments, and sometimes they're role-based. Samantha's done a series where be ClubExpress for treasurers or ClubExpress for webmasters to explain to people in those roles the tools that they have available to them. But before we get into the demonstration, let's take care of a little bit of housekeeping. All the phones and microphones are muted, so if you have questions, they should be entered into the chat window, and we will revisit the questions in the chat window to see if there's anything that wasn't answered during the demonstration. And this is particularly useful for those who are viewing this as a recording. And speaking of recordings, all of the recordings of the webinars are available on the ClubExpress Cool Stuff page. So you go to clubexpress.com, click on Cool Stuff, then click on the Webinars tab, and it will give you a schedule of upcoming webinars and also a list of recent webinars that have been recorded. And similarly, above the Webinars tab, there's a Video Tutorials tab. So these are recent tutorials, and one of the more recent ones is on this Accessibility Toolkit, which is a new optional feature. And just this week, Samantha made a new video available as an introduction to administration. So if you haven't already checked that out, check it out. And all of the videos are stored on YouTube. So if you're watching a video on YouTube, you can click the subscribe button and optionally on the notification bell so that you can be notified when new content is published. And finally, if you are using ClubExpress, and particularly if ClubExpress is working really well for you, it would be great if you could go to clubexpress.com/reviews and leave a review so other people who are evaluating association management solutions can have the benefit of how well ClubExpress is working for your organization. As you know, ClubExpress gathers basic information, your members' names, your members' address, their emails, and a whole bunch of information, basic demographic information. And this is common to all organizations that use ClubExpress. That's the standard member directory. But most organizations also need unique information that's unique to their organization. So you can ask questions of your members, and we call these additional member data. And some organizations also require files, and these are called the member attachments. And these are uploaded by the member or an administrator. And both additional member data and member attachments are part of the user's profile. So they stay with the user. So both questions and files might be used to establish things like qualifications. You might have licensing or certifications, or maybe experience. And sometimes they're used to determine kind of what the members are into, what products they use. You may want to know in a balloon club, do you own a balloon? What kind of balloon, et cetera? And we'll be using our demo club as an example. And the demo club is a fictional Northwest Balloon Club. For other organizations, it may just be a way for members to get to know more about each other so that when you look at a member's bio screen, you can see the kinds of things that they're showing in their additional member data. These kinds of things can be really useful. I belong to a community theater. And in a community theater, as part of the members' additional member data, you might ask for clothing sizes, shirt size, dress size, things like that. So this way, when somebody is casting or somebody is costuming, you have that information available to them. And the members are the ones that would typically update that information. These questions and attachments can be configured to appear during the time when the member joins the organization. So when they originally sign up, aside from asking them for their demographic information, you could say, I want you to also fill out these additional questions. And it can also appear during the renewal process. So when somebody renews, you can say, oh, okay, you're renewing, you're choosing your member type. Maybe you want to continue, maybe you want to upgrade your member type, but we want you to revisit either or both of these screens and just update the information. Now, for any of these questions, whether it be the additional member data or member attachments, they can be optional or they can be required. And they can also be hidden from the member so that maybe there's certain things that only the administrator can put in. You might have some fields about members that are not visible to members. Maybe you're keeping score on something that only the administrators need to know, or maybe there's some warning flags or things like that that just the administrators have access to, but not the members. And when it comes down to the visibility and who can edit them, again, you can have this be by the member and admins, or only to admins. And member data questions can be applicable to everyone, meaning every one of your members will be asked this question, or just to specific member types. Maybe if it's a pilot, for example, maybe you want to ask questions about their certification, and you've got a member type called pilot. You only want to ask this question to the people that it is germane to. So we'll be doing one about newsletters in a couple of minutes. And questions can be placed on the member's profile screen for easy updating, and member attachment files can also be optional or required. So these are just a little overview about the similarities between member data and member attachments, but there are some differences. During the demonstration, we're going to talk about a couple of things. How members actually view and update their data. So questions can be shown optionally on the member's bio screen. So that when somebody is looking at the bio of their own account, you can see not only where they are, you could see how they've answered certain questions. So you can either do it from the profile or from the bio screen. And a recent change, only a couple of months ago, primary members in a multi-member account, where you have a primary member and then a secondary and tertiary member, the primary members can now update the additional member data for secondary and tertiary members if administrators set it up that way. We'll talk a little bit about what you can do with the information. Well, one of the ways that's really very useful is in targeted communications. Say you could configure an email so that it goes out only to people that answered a specific question with a specific answer. And similarly, you could do the same thing for text messages, events. You could set up forums for people that have answered an additional data question with a particular answer. And there are mobile channels. And for those of you who are using village to village network, you can also set up services that way. And we'll talk about how to administer that data. We'll look at creating questions, answer types, limiting to specific member type. We'll look at some of the options, reports, report answers, how to assign coordinators, and how to use the member sign-up settings to remind or require members to update their data when they're joining or renewing. And then as far as member attachments go, we'll look at some of the member attachments. We'll add a new attachment definition, and we'll look at the fields that control who can view and upload and what kind of formats there are. And we'll show how members upload and update their files, and the same thing assigning coordinators. And we are on a demo club. And this demo club, we are logged in as a member. We're not logged in as an administrator. And we are logged in as a member. The first thing I want to do is show Jenny's additional member data. So by hovering over Jenny's name, we could either go to her profile. If I go to profile and scroll down to additional member data, this is where Jenny can edit her additional member data. And we'll come back to these questions in a moment. But if I just go back, say, to the home screen, one way of getting to it, and a fairly easy way, is to hover over her name and click on My Directory Listing. So this is showing your listing in what's called a standard member directory. So if I click on My Directory Listing, this has all the information, the bio information, the picture, the banner that she's using, all of her contact information and all of that. And then she can edit these things from here. And over here where it says additional information, that is the additional member data. And it only lists the fields that she has filled in. So you will see in a moment when I click on edit, there are some other fields that she has not filled in. So this only shows the field that she filled in. If a question has multiple answers, like a checkbox where you can check off all the places where you like to fly, they will all show up here. Some of the things to note is that the responses are case sensitive. So when we start looking at trying to send an email to people that entered their favorite envelope color was blue, the envelope is the balloon itself where the hot air goes into. And so if we search for a lowercase blue, it would not find it. It's looking for this answer. So here's the other way of getting to the additional member data screen is by clicking the edit icon. And so now it comes up to the same question here. We have a question here is, how many years have you been interested in ballooning? That's a terrible question. And you'll see when we go into edit, we say that this is a bad question because this is a temporal answer. So instead of saying, how many years have you been interested in ballooning? If she says, I'm interested for 10 years, well, next year she has to go change this. It'd be a much better question to say, what year did you become interested in ballooning? So that way, it only has to be answered once. There's no maintenance on it. So question, how old are you, is not very useful compared to what year were you born? Those kinds of things. So don't use temporal questions that don't need to be temporal. So this is the text field. This one here is radio buttons. So this is one choice of many. This one here is true or false, and you can decide whether it says yes or no, true or false, whatever you want it to say. These are check boxes, so you just check all that apply. And this one here says, what is your favorite envelope color? And you'll note we have a note underneath here that says, choose the primary color of the envelope. So this is telling you really to make your main choice and say, I really like sky blue. But if we come over here, it shows the favorite envelope color, but it doesn't show the comments. So the other thing is that when we go into Jenny's profile, she has a family membership and she has additional members. So if she clicks over here, I think her husband is Stan and her brother is Daniel, and they're all members here. And the tertiary member is her child. Tertiary members don't have a login, but you'll notice that on any one of these, we can go and update the data for Daniel or Stan or Sally. So that's a fairly new thing where the primary member can go update the data for their secondary and tertiary members. So that's what the members do with this. I'm going to log in as a different user. I'm going to log in as Martin Smith. And so if I go, say, to the control panel and I go to the communications tab and I want to send an emailing and I add an emailing here, after you fill in the basic information, you say, well, who do I want this emailing to go to? So say I managed to get a whole bunch of nylon, blue nylon, and I want to send this thing out and say, I want to send it to a new list, and as opposed to a saved distribution list, and I want to send it to, and it turns out it's I think the option with the longest title. So we say members with a specific answer to a club question. So if I click on this, it says, well, what question? Now you see internally the questions are named. So this one says, how long balloon? It's not a good question. I put that little note in there, said we really want to change that. So if I say my favorite envelope color, if I say blue, and add it to the list. So I'm going to send this right now only to people who are favorite envelope color and answer is blue. If I save this and I click over here to just get a little preview of the distribution list, you will see that 12 people that we can send emails to. We got a couple of them that have invalid email address. Some are not functional email address and some are refusing blast emails. But if I change that to red, there would be a different distribution. So this is one way you can use it. And you can do the same thing with text messages. You could create events, and in the event email, you would have the same distribution options in addition to just event options. You can have forums that are specific to people that answered a particular question, channels, and services. So this is, in effect, how it's used. But now let's go into administering it. How do you set this up? So I'm going to go to the control panel here, and on the People tab, not surprisingly, there is a choice for additional member data. So if I click on this, we go into the additional member data administration screen. So here are the current questions. The current questions are listed in alphabetical order. So you see we have this how long balloon. That's a terrible question. The name of the question is how long balloon. That's not the actual text of the question. We're just giving it a short name so that we can see it in lists. And what I can do is on any one of these, I can edit. So you'll see here, we have the question name, what kind of answer is it, who can see it, who can edit it, and the MAP is whether or not it appears when somebody is going through the membership sign up or renewal wizard. So on certain things here, like the offer emergency assistant, we want them to answer this question, and some just don't apply to the membership application, so we won't even ask those questions. So let's just take a look at one here. So if we look at favorite envelope color, we've got it, the name of the question. We'll skip the answer type for a minute. This is the text that's going to be displayed. What is your favorite envelope color, or what's your favorite balloon color, or whatever? You can have notes underneath called choose the primary color of the envelope. And because this is a radio button answer type, we list the choices, one on each line. If it was a different kind, if it was a number, we wouldn't have a list, but we might have a maximum and a minimum that you can enter into the number. So, well, in fact, let me just do that. If I just chose this to be an integer, for example, now we have a default answer, a minimum answer, a maximum answer. I'm just going to cancel this and we'll go back. But just to show you that this morphs depending on the nature of the answer type. Most of them also allow other. So if you allow other, you don't have to put in a blue, green, red, yellow. If I choose allow other, it will actually add another choice where the users can actually type in an answer. So maybe they like white as their main. Check allow other, it'll just add it to that. Whether or not you want to let them have comments. So I showed you how I added the comments about the color. Now, who does this apply to? It's applied to everybody or just to selected member types. I'll show you that in a moment. Who can see this? To the public or to the member? If the public can see it, the member can see it, or it's only for the admin. Who can edit it? Can the member edit this field or only the admins? And who does this apply to? Just primary, which is the default, and you can add it to secondary and tertiary. So if I want to add a question, we have a member type here called gold memberships. And the gold memberships, they can get a printed newsletter. So if I call this newsletter options, and I want this to be just a true false here. And the question is, do you want electronic newsletters in addition to your printed newsletter? And so let's make this one yes, and let's make this one no, and not have a default answer. And what we want to do is say this only applies to selected member types. Let's make it required on the membership app. And if I click on save, now we have this one called newsletter options, and we have this new icon here for member types, because this is only going to apply to specific member types and will only be asked of that member type. So if I click on this, it turns out we have 2 gold memberships. So if I say individual gold membership and family gold membership and save that, then anybody who is joining with a gold membership or renewing a gold membership will be asked that question. And we could also take a look at some of these things here. We could look at the answers as a report and say, oh, let's sort by answer. So if I choose next and go to HTML, we'll see that all these people answered blue. All these people answered green. These people answered no preference. A couple answered red and a few answered yellow. So this is one easy way of you finding out what the actual syntax is. And you can look at this and say, oh, okay, well, there are a whole bunch of people that are interested in this. So therefore, I want to send this email to these people. That's a good example. This here is the display sequence. So you see here, this is the alphabetical listing of the names of the question, but you can click on display sequence and come over here. It's like maybe you want the newsletter option to be the very first one up here. And so if you save that, when they see this additional member data screen and they are of that member type, that would be the first question they see. So over here, I don't think we have very many answers. Let me just see here. I hope we don't have very many answers, because I would probably kill this one here. Yeah, I mean, these answers are useless. How long have you been a member, or how long have you been interested in ballooning? What I would do is I would delete it and then change it. I wouldn't change it from a number to a year. I suppose you could, but the existing data would not make any sense. So I would just delete this and create a new one. And when you add that question, you would say, oh, I want it to be a year. And it will give you a place where you can just pick from the year, or pick from a month, or pick from a day of week, and all of that. So you've got all of these. And there is, if we click on the question mark here, we get help. And if you click on watch videos, it should load a webinar about additional member data, a tutorial about additional member data, and a tutorial about all of the answer types. This is really where you drill down into detailed instructions about this. So, like other things, if we go back to the control panel, we can go and say, who can manage additional member data? Because right now we're an administrator. But if I go into the configure icon up here, I can go to additional member data and choose who I want to be a coordinator. So if I wanted, say, Jenny to be able to manage this and be, in effect, an administrator of this particular module, I could just add her here. And the other place is if we go to Club and go to Administrators and Coordinators, we can come over here and either by function, or we can look at Jenny Cho to see what she is a coordinator of. So she's a coordinator of all these things here, including additional member data. So you can look at this by coordinator or by function. So we can click on the function here and look under the People tab here for additional member data and click on this, and we can see who are the coordinators. So one other thing is with additional member data, if we go back to the people, and this export answers is a very comprehensive export. So when you export this, and see if I can open it here, this has a lot of information. It's got all of the information, all of the answers for anybody who has answered an additional data question. So you can see the names of the questions, what their answers are. And so anybody who has answered any additional data question will be represented here. The way we decide whether or not people are going to be asked about their additional data questions or member attachments is from the control panel, you click on member sign up. And so on this member sign up page, here's where you're going to say, okay, additional member data. I want them to be shown this screen. I want members, and for that matter, and administrators, I want them to be shown this screen when they're signed up to be a new member. And in this particular case, we said, yes. But here it says, well, what about when they're renewing? Well, yeah, I want them to update it when they renew. And the same thing for member attachments. So if member attachments is active and there have been attachments defined, then you can come in here and say, yeah, well, maybe I don't want the administrators to do it, but for members, we certainly require this. And we can also specify first login. And there's, not surprisingly, a video tutorial about the member sign up. Used to be called the membership wizard. Now it's called the member sign up setup page. And we have a tutorial on that. So this determines when these pages will be presented to people. And you can do the same thing about whether or not you want their interest to be shown, whether or not you want to be able to show additional charges or joining agreement, things like that. So I'm just going to save that. So, Samantha, just before we jump on to member attachments, do we have any questions about additional member data?
So there were a lot of people who were wondering about the visibility settings and what it means when you are selecting public versus member and who can see it. So just to reiterate that when you are creating your question, you have 3 visibility settings, either public, member, or administrator. And the public setting means that other members, other than the person answering the question, can see those responses in the member directory. The member option shows those to just the member, and then the admin option shows it to just the administrator. And then remember that with our member directory, you have the ability to allow your members to choose how much information is shown. So there are a couple of different caveats there.
And this is also a great example of when all else fails, read the instructions. And the instructions, Samantha happened to write this help system, so this is terrific. So yeah, if you're not sure of anything, you can always click on the question mark here, and it will bring you to context-sensitive help, which generally should be able to give you all the information you need. Like here, there's things about answer type, all these different information about the different answer types. And there's some more information about formatted questions, because you can put in your own formats. Like if you have a valid format for a registration number, it needs 4 letters, 3 digits, and an @ sign or something like that. You can deal with that. And you can also ask scale questions. And scale questions are things where you have your people rate things on a scale, sometimes from 1 to 10, sometimes from awful to wonderful, or unimportant to very important. And there's a little wizard that will let you create groups of these things so that you don't have to define them one at a time. You define the headings for the rows and the headings for the columns, and it puts it all together and just creates them for you, which is quite nice. We don't have any in our demo club at the moment. More questions, Samantha?
Yes. So what happens if you change data collection selections after data already exists? So that question came in. I'm assuming that data collection is referring to the answer type. So all of your answers are still going to be stored. Let's say you choose a select list as your original response format, and then you decide you want everyone to be able to just type in an answer using short text. All of those answers are still stored, and you can still run reports to view those answers, even if you change the way you're collecting them.
Yeah, but what you have to be careful of, you don't want to change to incompatible types.
Mhm.
So you don't necessarily want to. I don't think they're all stored as text in the background. It's possible that they are, but the thing is, you don't want to change something from a number to a year or something like that. I don't think it's a good idea. I could be wrong. It could be that everything is just stored as text behind the scenes. But the other thing is that when you're using this, where it says, I want to look at an answer to a question, say for an event or an email, you say, this is only for those where you're giving them a predefined list to select from, whether it be true, false, or an item list, or radio buttons, or a drop-down list, something like that. You can't limit based on free-form text. Anything else before we move on to member attachments?
That is it.
Okay, good. All right, so let's talk about member attachments. So let me log back in as Jenny. So I'm going to log in as a different user, and we'll call J Cho. Jenny. What she can do is she can go to her profile, and under the more member options here, there is attachments. So in member attachments, we've defined a couple of things, and some of them are required, some of them are optional, and there's a little flag here as to whether or not they've actually uploaded. So you'll see here is showing that they haven't uploaded this yet, and this one is actually required. So what happens here is we're asking for a couple of different things from the members. If they are going to be on the chase team, where it chases the balloons, and when the balloon sets down, they bundle everything up and cart it away. Maybe you want pictures of the chase vehicle. So this one here, if I click on this one here, this is a picture of Jenny's chase vehicle. The fact that we can add more than one file here means that we have what's called versions turned on. So that means that, like, maybe you wanted to have an insurance card, and you needed the insurance card for a particular year, and you need them to add another insurance card. So if I click on add and I click on select, I have one here called proof of insurance, and I save it. And so maybe this was their updated version. Rather than them deleting one, this way it just keeps a running log. So if you have things where you need a certification or a license photo or things like that, a private pilot's license, I think we have one here. Yeah, I just had some sample photos here. So this is just a picture of your license. Maybe you have to have a waiver that was set up. So I would add a waiver, and see, it says here, because this is a document type, it can be a PDF or a doc file or text or a spreadsheet or a zip file, but you're not going to have like an executable file. So you would select the file, in which case I'm just going to take this PDF file here. And if this was my waiver, that maybe it was something that was downloaded from our document library. Maybe it's a liability waiver or something like that. You download from the library and you come here and you upload it and attach it to your profile. So these are all the different things. You see now this doesn't have an exclamation point. Now it has a check here. If I delete it, it asks me if I'm sure. And now it says, hey, this thing's missing. This is what the members would do. So now I'll log back in as Martin, and let's take a look at configuring this. So if we go to the control panel, on the People tab, we have member attachments. And let's just take a look at an existing attachment. So we have the title, whether or not it is active, meaning whether or not people can actually upload and view these things. So we have one that maybe was used in the past, and we've disabled it. Whether or not items are required. So we saw that the waiver was required. the format of each document, whether they be images or documents, who can view it, who can upload it, and whether or not it allows for versioning. So the versioning is whether or not you can add more than one file. So let's just take a look at the chase vehicle images. And we say, okay, the title of this document we want you to upload is your images with plural. And we have a little description, upload a photo of your vehicle. It is active. We could make it disabled. Who can view it? The members, other people cannot view your uploaded file. So it's not other members. This is the member who can look at it through their profile screen. Or is it just something that the administrator does? Because it might be, again, some private documents that you are doing, maybe a resume review or something like that, because maybe you're asking them to upload a resume and now you want to have comments about it and you only want admins to be able to view it, and maybe the only ones that can upload it. Maybe the member can't see these documents that are attached to their profile. Then you decide whether it's going to be an image format or a document format, whether or not versioning is turned on. And again, if we click on this here, and if we say add an attachment, it says set versioning to yes to allow multiple versions of the same file. It's not necessarily the same file. You're just requesting a file type. For example, if members need to provide an insurance certificate for each year, you can retain a complete history of these files. So that's usually what it's used for, and whether or not it's required. And then what happens is you can do a report of members who have not filled out their required attachments. So if you were looking for people that haven't filed their waiver yet, you can get a report there, or you can get a report by member, and you decide what member type you want. And so for each member, you can say by attachment type, who has updated it, when did they upload it, things like that. And of course, you can go back the other way around and go by member and say, here are the attachments for each member. There are reports here by document type, by member, and members without attachments. And then the options are really very simple. Whether or not you enable this in the member's profile. If you say no, when the member goes to look at their profile, they will not see an option to manage their attachments. So you can just turn it off there. And then you just decide what you want to call them, because we're calling them attachment. It could be file or documents or uploads or whatever you want to call it. So, Samantha, any questions about attachments?
There were no questions about attachments.
Well, maybe we covered it, or maybe this is new to people and they're first trying to absorb how they might want to use this. Display sequence here lets you change the order in which the attachments are shown on the attachment page. And add attachment just lets you add the information and fill in all the information that we just showed on one of the existing ones. Samantha?
Yes. So there were a handful of questions that swooped right in. So I'll start from the bottom. Can non-members have attachments? They cannot. Non-members do not have a member profile. We require a written application and voted approval for membership. When a person signs up online, can we require the application as an attachment? And is it possible to set it up as an option to download the application? So that's an interesting question that comes up a lot in training, especially if you have a member type that requires approval. So what people usually will do is, create that form and attach it to the member's profile. So you can create a form that your members can download and fill out the application, print off using ad hoc forms, which is one of the modules that's built into your site located in the communications tab. You can use the same skills, creating those question and answers, using those different answer types to create that printable membership application that your prospective members can then upload as part of their member profile. Does versioning apply different version numbering to multiple versions? So, Alan, I don't think that
No,
there's, yeah,
no, it
there's,
doesn't. That's
okay.
different. Is different than, say, the versioning system that is used on custom pages. Here, it is simply saying we're allowing you to upload multiple files. So if you have something called insurance cards, make it plural, then you would say, yes, I want you to be able to do that. And then you could have the comment underneath it say, include the year in the title of the card that you're doing. On the other hand, if you had an attachment that's just called current insurance card, so you're not interested in keeping the previous insurance cards, then you would turn off versioning on it. So then if they wanted to edit it, so if I come over to, say, a pilot's license here, let me see if I go to my profile here and I go to attachments and I go to private pilot license, you'll notice that there is no plus here. So this was not set for version. So if I want to edit it, I could come over here and select a new file. And I could just use an insurance coverage sample. I don't know why that's that way. And I save that. So now that just replaced it. So it's telling me when it was added. So that would be my current license as opposed to your sequence of licenses. So that's really the reason it's done. Or if you just need more than one picture, show front and side view of your mugshots, so we know what to look out for in the post office. Samantha?
So, Roger Huff has a question. The attachment viewer shows Microsoft Word.
I don't know what happens if we upload a Word document. This one here, if I select this, no, these are all images. Let's try this one here. Let's just go pick up a file here and save it. And now if I view it, all it's doing is it's downloading it into my download folder. So it's not actually viewing it, but it's making it available to me. It would be the same thing with Excel and things like that. So that's what that's about.
And one last question. So, if members are uploading different versions of the same attachment and they remove an attachment that they've uploaded, can they remove individual versions as opposed to an entire set of that document?
Well, yeah. In fact, the only thing you can do is remove individual versions. If I went, say, logged in as Jenny again, because she's got a few already there. And if I go here to her profile and I go to attachments here, since she's got a few versions, a few different documents here, they could all have the same name. You see down here, they're the same name. There is no way to just delete all of them. You just delete whichever ones you want. And it's showing you the upload date here. So yeah, you just whack the ones that you no longer want. And with that, we've run up against the clock. So I appreciate everyone coming today. I hope you learned some things and found some things useful here for your own organization. And we will see you in the next webinar. Thanks everyone for coming and stay safe.